Black Mask is a very underrated Batman villain, however thanks to the Arkham games has been turned into a classic. Perhaps not on the same level as Scarecrow or Two-Face, but certainly on the same level as Ventriloquist and Mr. Zsasz. He's also managed to show up in live action 3 times. Well, one technically wasn't him, it was Dad wearing his mask. But I'm still counting him. Now if you don't know, we've been ranking live action Batman villains for a few weeks now. And even have a playlist, links down below, also to my Twitter and Instagram. But today we're ranking live action Black Mask, because Black Mask is... I know, I can't say it. Feel free to bully me down below. Black Masks. There, I did it. Sadly, last place is Gotham. Unlike most versions, or well, really all versions of Black Mask, aside from Jeramiah Arkham, this Black Mask isn't Roman Sionis, but Richard Sionis, played by Todd Stashwick. He's an original character to the show who would later be introduced into the comics as Black Mask's father, being a precursor to his son as the Mask, opposed to being Black Mask. But look at the guy, he is very clearly Black Mask, and therefore belongs on this list. Now I don't dislike Richard, but he certainly lasts for the fact he only appeared in 2 episodes, one of which he was just a cameo and died. I do think he was a pretty good one-off villain for the series, in fact probably one of the strongest. Strongest one-offs. Not strongest villains, he's way below when it comes to the strongest villains. But for 1 episode, it was pretty okay. In fact, I would say pretty good. But he was really just that. Pretty good at being a one-off villain. Only appearing later in the series to be quickly killed by Tabitha, in a way that proved that he's not as smart as his son, easily falling for Theo's tricks, by thinking he could just leave the team. Like, of course he was going to kill him, or Tabitha killed him. Second place is Batwoman, played by Peter Outbridge. This character is hard to rank, because I thought he was a pretty good Roman Sionis. He's a sketchy businessman, but for a Black Mask, he kinda fell flat. I do think that his mask and costume were pretty decent. I found Roman's villain motivation as a character to really work, that being his desperation to bring back his daughter via brainwashing Kate. I do think he also strived to his one-liners. I just don't think his time with the mask on was used to the best potential it could have been. We saw more as a businessman than a crime boss, which the character is meant to be both, but here he kinda lacked one of them. That of course being crime boss, which he was, and was said that he was, but we never really saw it. The character also lacked a general connection to Ryan until the later episodes, and by later I mean last 2. Which I think is not necessarily the best way of going with your villain, as usually the villains of a season, or villains in general, have some sort of connection or some sort of general dislike for the hero. But in this scenario, Black Mask has no real reason to dislike Batwoman. The characters hardly ever even interacted, and it wasn't even her who beat him, it was Alice. However, I will say I do think as a Roman Sionis, in addition to the show as a sketchy businessman, is actually a pretty good addition to the season. But to be the season's main villain, I don't think it really worked. Or at least it didn't work as much as it could have. And first place might surprise most, but it's Birds of Prey, played by Ewan McGregor. This version is, well, kinda odd. I think it's the best portrayal, even if it is an odd outing for Black Mask. Because, while it is a little strange, I think it's a great one for this Black Mask. Perhaps not the main Black Mask, but this concept of the character, it works for it. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head. Ewan portrayed the character with a bit of a feminine but masculine personality that gave a pretty unique take on such an iconic villain, which might not be loved by most, but for me personally, I think it does work for this film. A mix that worked well with the character's flirtation with anybody. I did think that this was the best adaptation of the character's tortures done in live action. Black Mask is known in the comics for being, let's say, not the nicest person to come across or withhold information from, because he will torture you. And I do think that that was handled in this movie pretty well, and I did like that it didn't hold back when it came down to what he would do. The character's depiction, as in his costume and mask, I think was actually pretty good, but we hardly saw it. I think it definitely would have been better if the character wore that more in the movie. He's not a perfect depiction of Black Mask, but a good attempt at trying to do something with the character. I think Black Mask is a character who's yet to be really fully realized in live action. I didn't hate any live action on Black Mask, but at the same time, I didn't think any of them were really great or amazing. Which did make this list pretty hard to make, but I didn't dislike any of them. In fact, I did enjoy all of them. Just perhaps not as much, at least not for a single outing, as other Batman villains have had. I hope that does change with so many Batman live action things going on at this moment. I'm sure the character could show up really anywhere. Even in the Penguin show, I think the character could show up. And if he does, which he probably won't, unfortunately, but I'm certain he at least will return in live action in some incarnation, I hope he does rise to the top of my list. Because Black Mask, as much as I like the character, I do have to admit that he hasn't been fully done in live action yet. There's a lot of potential there that has yet to be realized with the character, which can be seen in the Arkham games, as well as simply just the comics, especially the Catwoman comics from the early 2000s. But until next time, I'll see you guys next time. I don't know what the outro was. I guess I was trying something different. I'll go back to my normal outro. And that's it. Like always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!